Hey everyone, you got a special supersized episode of the Outlier Insight Show. I'm Adam Rosenberg, and as you can see, I brought another one of my friends, Dustin Swedelson from VSIN, producer, on-air talent, pretty sharp guy on props, first half, futures. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff for you guys. We'll give out some plays as well. Dustin, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. You're such a Seth Cohen over here. Very organized.
So for those at home, you're gonna get to hear all these really cool jokes that Dustin and I make as you know,
you have to Google them.
As Northeast Jewish kids do. But specifically, like Dustin and I went from being like acquaintances to like, yeah, we definitely got to be friends when we realized we both have a love for the OC. Not the actual OC, but the show.
I lost half a summer when the first season DVDs were dropped. It was at 2004. I want to say 2005.
It was the best.
Locked myself away, and I still hate Oliver to this day. I won't give away any spoilers.
Dude, that dude, I don't want to give any spoilers, but you know what I didn't realize till the other day is that show had both Chris Brown and Chris Pratt were on that show in bit character parts. So
Chris Pratt was Summer's boyfriend in college.
Yeah. Anyway, people didn't come here to hear us talk about this, but definitely didn't. Dustin, I want to kick it off. We were talking about it before we jumped on, but I want to talk about futures with you, and we're getting towards the end of the season. So first, I'd love to hear, this is your time to victory lap. Dustin's guy that, by the way, guys, is like really good at kind of identifying value and figuring out futures, but I'd love to hear like a couple that you have in pocket, and then maybe some advice that you have for folks, and you and I can talk about one in particular that we're pretty sad about. But you know, what are a couple futures that you have? Like, let's talk about, keep it on NFL for now. And like, what do you got in pocket that you're pretty excited about?
The Bills to win the AFC at 11-1 right now. That's a decent one. Ravens from the preseason 19-1. I also took Lamar 13-1 to win MVP. I'd say the MVP market though is probably where I'm most excited, because I have a tendency, Adam, to get out of control with my futures. I did with baseball, where I just had so many bets in the market. And luckily, I ended up with a Diamondbacks 80-1 ticket taking on a Rangers anywhere.
I remember this. Yeah, I remember when you posted this.
7-1, 15-1, 25-1 on the Rangers. So luckily, I had a stress-free World Series, and I won Blake Snell 40-1 for Cy Young. But yeah, it could have been a disaster of a baseball season had things not played out the way it did. I have a tendency to get out of control. So I've been disciplined this year. So I started the season preseason with a Lamar MVP, 13-1.
Yep.
A few weeks in, I took Kirk Cousins, 130-1.
Well, the quarterback show dropped. Everybody started going after it then. Like, as soon as that show dropped, it was like everyone was like, oh man, Kirk Cousins is the dude.
Well, you know what? I waited a few games into the season, and he got off to such a hot start. He was leading the team, the league in touchdowns at the time. The key to that bet was the defense was so bad, so I knew he was always going to be throwing, and they had no run game. So he's going to put up gaudy numbers. So I like the bet. He got hurt the next week, so it was completely irrelevant. I took a huge swing, 300-1 on Myles Garrett. I know it's not going to hit, but on the small chance it would have, I wanted it to be live, because when these things become live, then you can get creative with them. Most recently, about 3-4 weeks ago, Tyreek Hill 25-1. I actually think him getting hurt proved why he should be the MVP.
Yeah, I actually think he's a lot more live than people think.
Yeah. And then the one I'm most proud of, about 16, 17 days ago, I called Christian McCaffrey 35-1. And by the way, I don't feel great about the ticket right now. Like, I don't think it's a lock. I have no idea what's going to happen in that market. But I looked at the schedule. They had the Cardinals coming up, who are awful against running backs in every which way. Thought he'd have a big game, and he did. The next game was Baltimore. I didn't know if he would have a big game there, but I had a feeling Brock Purdy was going to shorten up. I said it on our show on VSiN. I was like, this is a team that can force Purdy to make mistakes, and he will go from this heavy favorite to something a lot longer. And it happened exactly how I thought it would. Very rarely does that happen. But I think that's a lesson in looking at these markets with the MVP. You have to look 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road in the matchups and how it looks for all parties. That was a weird situation where both guys that I wanted, the one I wanted to back and the one I wanted to fade, are on the same team facing the same opponents. But it ended up working out in my favor. Another thing with futures, it's a phrase. I guess it's a Rothschild's phrase, which is always dicey to bring up in media. But when they're essentially saying when it comes to like stock market, when there's blood in the streets, buy. And I think like we see that with people I'm not good with stocks. I'm not good with money, but I'm good at identifying value.
Good at value, yeah.
And there are just times when everyone is down on something. You have to look at if there's a scenario where this team or this player could become live again, and don't be afraid to take those shots, as you and I did on the Bengals. I got them at 40-1 during the year for $1,000 free roll, and I would make the bet again every single time.
Absolutely. So yeah, I had him at 25-1, and like I doubled down. Actually, I had him preseason because I'd forgotten I'd already had him preseason like 10-1. They were my favorite bet. Like a friend of both of ours, Jeff Parles, had me on his shows, and I was all in on the Bengals. And they were about to do the run that I thought I thought they were going to do last year, and then it all fell apart. And I remember like seeing your ticket and it's it's the interesting thing that you mentioned that I want people to really take away is the looking 2 steps ahead. And I think that that's really important. Like I had Ravens bets preseason, but I doubled down on the Ravens as the number 1 seed at a shorter number at about 3-1 about 3 weeks ago, because their path basically took them through all the teams that they were going to compete with. So essentially, one, it created a natural hedge if it gets to us really this weekend. Because if I want, I can just bet Miami, because the winner of this game this weekend, Miami and the Ravens, is going to be the number 1 seed. Exactly. But either way, it's just what's going to shorten like crazy.
I have that with Tampa and New Orleans. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I have Tampa plus 320 to win the South. I'm just going to bet New Orleans this week.
Yeah, no, it makes complete, because this is going to be for the Tampa's actually one of like I'm trying to find a way to get myself there to betting Tampa, but it's like such a clear spot.
Yeah, this is a lesson I'm do. I think they were like 10-1, 9-1 to win the division preseason. And I created the scenario in my head where I was like, I've been anti-Desmond Ridder from day one. I think he's absolute garbage. The hubris of Arthur Smith to believe that he can get the most out of any quarterback is what's going to end up doing him in here, because he saw Desmond Ridder and he said, I don't care how bad he is. I know how good I am as a player.
Yeah.
And that's what screwed him.
I've got Joni Smith back. It's going to be great. It's good. Yeah.
So basically, I missed out on 10-1 at plus 320. I had to jump in early in the year and just dive into it. Like, that's the thing with the futures market is like, even if you miss the best number, like Kevin Stefanski, I have him coach of the year. I only have 2 tickets. I have Mike Tomlin 22-1. I have Stefanski 14-1. I was eyeing Stefanski at like 40-1, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like my vibe on what he's doing is off. I obviously didn't see Joe Flacco ending up looking like this.
He's actually the real MVP. If you were really talking about wins above replacement, and like by definition, Joe Flacco is the MVP.
Yeah, like, no, most valuable to a team. He's actually better than the quarterback that they paid all the money to. So
right. No, I think I had Shane Steichen, and then that bet became, and this is something that, for folks, like you start to think about, how does this bet become maybe something else? Like, for example, so the Steichen bet that I had was because I took that preseason because I didn't want to take the Colts to win the division. I think it was only like 6-1.
Yeah.
And the 25-1 essentially covers you, because like if they make the playoffs, he's live for coach of the year. And if they win the division, he's definitely coach of the year.
And it's a big ticket you can maneuver like that. I think that's such an important thing with futures to me, is like, when I have a ticket and it's live, it gives me options down the stretch to get down on plus prices on other people. I think that's that's the way you don't bet a future because you go, it's 100% going to hit. You bet a future because it's such a big plus price for you to put up so little money that you can guarantee lock in a profit either way at the end.
Yeah. And I think that, if people want one to be to give out right now, I'm telling folks right now that when the playoffs start, the value is on picking the Super Bowl MVP in the first round, because you essentially have a better money line, especially if it's a quarterback, especially if it's Joe Flacco. Yeah. Joe Flacco for Super Bowl MVP, because there's Nick Foles vibes all over the place on this one. And 2, quarterbacks win that award, like with the exception of when Cooper Kupp was just outstanding. So that's something to look at when these playoffs come, is that, hey, you could, the way I used to attack it was on the favorites, because like if I don't want to back the Chiefs all the way, well, fine, then take Mahomes at probably 10 or 15 to 1 to be MVP of the Super Bowl, because you basically are taking a ticket that was, instead of 4 to 1, becomes like much bigger based on that. So look, the takeaways I want everyone to have on futures is the stuff that you've just mentioned, which is think about it 2 steps ahead and give yourself the option to have literally to have options sitting in your pocket, because that's how you want to do it.
Like, I had TCU to win the national title 80 to 1 last year.
I remember that. I had them they won the Big 12 for me, so I was like, really, I
it was a nice ticket because no one saw it coming first year of Sonny Dykes. But like, I started fading them when the ticket felt real in November. I bet it in November, early November. And I remember I faded them maybe a week or two later with Baylor, and Baylor kicked like TCU advanced with a field goal. Its time expired, and I had Baylor +3. So my hedge ended up cashing, and then the ticket stayed alive all the way through, and I hedged against it a couple other times. I made money on the ticket, even though the ticket never cashed.
It's great. It's a lot of fun to do, because it's basically the market side of betting. So with that in mind, I'm going to pivot us a little bit for a couple markets that are coming up this weekend. Props. You bet both. I mean, you bet a bunch of the sports, but we're going to focus a little bit on NFL. What are a couple key props that you are eyeing this weekend? I'm going to bring up a couple of things and some stats while you're looking at it, but I know you have a couple that you like. This is the part that people were listening. People are like, I don't care about futures. Fast forward ahead. Now here's all your picks. So
hate philosophy. Just give me the results.
Yeah, really.
So Kieran Williams for the Rams. I think the number's gotten big, but I'm still willing to bet it because the Giants, and I'm a Giants fan, are horrible against running backs. I've been betting on a lot of running backs taking on New York this year. I'm going to look at his rush attempts instead of his rush yards, though. 94.5 right now. It opened 93.5. That's a little too lofty for me. He absolutely could get there, though. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go
look at how many carries he has. Like, this is like old school, like running backs again. Look at he's getting 21, 25, 27, 22.
So the Giants allow the 4th most rush attempts to running backs, just under 25 per game. He's had over 19.5 in 4 straight. And here's the thing. You have to look at the situation. There's 2 aspects that I really like. One, he doesn't have a competition for carries. Ronnie Rivers had the next most carries among running backs last game. I don't know who that is. Legitimately don't know. Never heard of the person.
I honestly thought it was a misspelling of Isaiah Livers from Hughes Point, Michigan. I had no idea who it was.
They tried to get carries to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp last game. That just shows you that's just to get Williams a breather. And then finally, this is just a correlation I like to do. If I'm going to bet on a running back, I like to bet on favorites, because if the number is right and they truly are 5.5 point favorites on the road, that means there's more running late than there is throwing, which will allow us to get to that number to keep the clock churning. So,
and you can see it when there it is, like when LA wins by 6 or more, a touchdown or more, it's just like all that green. It just happens. I mean, it's because you run out the clock. I use a similar angle on the total for the game on Saquon, which basically when there are 50 or less points scored in a game that has like a total of 43, or if it's like I give it a touchdown buffer, Saquon hits his rush attempts like it's nobody's business.
Oh, wow. That's a good angle.
Yeah. It's like, it's crazy because and now they're just getting like, he's getting tons. It's the same kind of workhorse thing. There's nobody. Who else are they giving it to? Matt Breida?
No. That's the thing. As long as he's healthy. And by the way, it's like the deal where it's like a rental car at this point, right? You just wear that thing out until you have to hand the keys back over because there's no shot he's coming back next year. And then if you look at
that's such a great analogy.
I think recent results too. I always like to look at to make sure like things are staying on track, because we're at a point in the season where these teams can be very different post-bye. Swift had 20 for 92 last week. Kamara only had 16 for 66 and 15 in week 15 against the Giants, but like he hasn't been great this year. AJ Dillon, they were losing 15-50 for 53. But guys like Ramondre Stevenson had 21 for 98. The 2 running backs on Washington combined for 23. The 2 backs on Dallas combined for 27. Like, people are running the ball at the Giants. That's why I like that play.
No, that's great. Speaking of Swift, you know, I obviously love him as an Eagles fan. I know he is on your list as well as a prop that you were liking.
Again, another team you play running backs against are the Cardinals. They allow.
Oh my God, it's so good.
The most attempts, the second most yards to running backs. They also allow a lot of receiving touchdowns to running backs for whatever reason, 8 and 15 games. But Swift's coming off 20 for 92 against the Giants. Here's the thing about Swift. I think they're realizing how badly they need the run at this point with the way things look with the passing game. So I think they're going to lean on him and get back to basics. And then again, you look at the last few weeks against Arizona. Herbert 20 for 112, CMC 18 for 115. The two Steelers running backs combined 63 and 59 together. Kyron Williams had 143 on 16. Singletary from Houston, 22 for 112. And Bijan had 22 for 95. Teams are running all over the Cardinals. Philly will get up and they'll hand it over to Swift and he'll run out the clock. 68.5 feels a little bit low, actually. I thought we were going to be in the 70s here.
Yeah, Swift is on my radar. I've been hitting against the and I gave it out a few weeks ago. Like Kyron Williams was another one where I just did his alts because they hung like a 50 against the Cardinals, and I'm like, they're going to run through him. He had 124 yards that game. Swift alts might be in play. The numbers aren't really that great, and they seem to know this, but like it's probably if he has a 100-yard game after a 92, like this is the one. So it's probably worth sprinkling on that 3-1. In addition to what you're going to have on the rush yards, because like if it's going to happen, this is the game where that's going to happen.
Yeah, and you know this, the Eagles don't look right offensively. And when teams don't look right, they get back to fundamentals and basics. And for them specifically, they're such a physical team at the line of scrimmage. That is running the football. That is what they're going to want to do when they don't feel right. It makes them feel comfortable. They feel like they can pick up yards on anyone. And against Arizona, that's all you need to do.
Another game that you and we mentioned it before, and I have a prop in it that I love. You do too. You and I both have targeted New Orleans Saints. So first of all, how do you think that this Saints Bucks game is going to play out? And then I think you and I both have props for this game.
Yeah. I don't have a good feel. And because when I have a future and I'm hedging the future, I don't even think about like the actual betting aspect of it. I just think about my perspective, right? The one aspect that I like from the props, though, is Olave. I mean, Derek Carr is force-feeding him the ball. And I know he was banged up last week. He ended up playing. He's been banged up to start this week. I think Tampa Bay is the better overall team. I think Baker Mayfield is significantly better than Derek Carr. And because I think Tampa Bay will get up to a lead, that will mean New Orleans is throwing from behind, which means more opportunities for Olave. I debated between receptions and yards. But when you look at Tampa, man, the Bucs allow the most receiving yards to wide receivers, 194.86 per game. And Olave's gone over 66.5 in 4 of 5. I mean, just crazy numbers, averaging almost 6 receptions a game, 12.9 yards per reception. That's about 75 yards a game. So it's just one of those deals where I think Olave is going to get the ball a lot because he seems to be the only guy that's really trusted for New Orleans in the passing game.
He's getting 20% of the air yards too, which is great. I love it. I went on my end. I went with a little bit of a value play on my end. I took a Rashid Shaheed ladder. Is what I put together today. 36 and 70 the last 2 weeks. He basically took advantage of obviously Olave not being there, but the thing, and then he went over in both the meetings that he's had his career against Tampa Bay. 7 targets and a 68% route rate in week 4, which is the first time they saw him. Olave and the big guns were all taking those targets. It made sense. But what I really liked was last week when Olave came back, he had 95% of the route. Olave was like 87, and it was obvious, like they were working him back in and everything was fine. But he also does a lot of that work out of the slot and then in motion, which Tampa Bay is very bad at. You mentioned all these things about how they're really bad at receivers. Look, this is a team that I've watched. I had like a whole list of the guys that have had get right games against Tampa Bay. Calvin Ridley, Kyle Phillips, Jonathan Mingo. Like these are all guys that have found ways to explode. So at a base starting line of 30, I was able to kind of move around and found that, like 40 yards is plus 130 and then 50 is plus 220. I laddered him up to 80 yards because like he had 120 earlier this year. It's 850. And then actually I did sprinkle a little bit on him to have 100 yards and it's 11-1. So I just kind of ran the whole gamut on it. It's just that I don't know what Tampa is like. It's funny because people think that the Saints are an incredibly slow team, but 65% of the time they're still passing the ball. So it's just like they just use the clock in that sort of way. God bless, I guess, Taysom Hill. But
I also like that they're on the road, right? They're on the road, that they're underdogs. And that in theory means that there will be more throws for them throwing from behind.
Yeah, it's that's a way to think about a lot of these is what is the game script? What is the game script that is going to happen for this to take place? Another one that I liked that is actually for the Saturday game. We have this random standalone Saturday game. But
at
I
night,
like
at night.
Yeah, it's just it's really weird. Brandon Cooks. So Brandon Cooks 40 yards is plus 108. That's his baseline. Brandon Cooks either like shows up or is missing in action completely, and that's it. Brandon Cooks at home is just been over in 7 out of well, for this season it's been like I think it's a 6 out of 8 is what he's had at home. But I took Brandon Cooks. He pops. Dak's passing yards. This is another thing for people to look at. When passing yards for the quarterback props are set at like 280 as they are for Dak Prescott, someone's got to get these yards. Yes, it's probably going to be CD Lamb on some of them, but like that's a way to look at it. Like we can go look right now at like what Derek Carr's passing yards are, and like that's a tell because they got to go somewhere. And if it's not, there's plenty of room to go around. So let's see. His passing yards are at 250. So like that's a considerable number that's going to be there.
Well, and remember, CeeDee Lamb likes to work out of the slot. So if they're looking to stretch the field, he's going to be one of the guys they want to take shots with. Obviously, they have a bunch of options, but he is one of the guys that they can take deep shots with.
Yeah, and it's also, Dallas off a
I love Dallas in this spot.
I love Dallas in this spot. I think it's a letdown spot for Detroit. They I don't like motivation angles because I just don't believe in it. Like these guys are playing every week, but the reality is like they are pretty much locked into a 3. They West won their division. They're now going on they're going on the road. Dallas, we've seen, is noticeably different at home. They just absolutely are just always like slinging the ball. And look, he's Cooks averages 64 yards at home. He averages 19 on the road. It's a very clear split. Detroit's got the 4th worst explosive pass defense, meaning they give up the 4th most 20 yards or more bombs. So which is exactly what Cooks does. So that's why I love him this weekend, and I kind of laddered him up through as well. And last thing that we'll take through, tell me then, we always forget about it, but what are a couple sides that you are really eyeing and you're interested in and you're looking at this week? So you being the man who used to parlay all the first half for teams, and you're killing it on it.
I had a great year last year with it. In honor of that, because I know you wanted that, I do have a couple.
Oh, I love it.
For you. But one note on the Cowboys. I'm figuring out if I'm going to go first half or full game in the Cowboys. It's down to 4.5 out here in Vegas at one of the books. I feel like that's a number I want to take. Look, Dallas coming off brutal stretch. It's the final leg of Seattle, Philly, at Buffalo, at Miami, now back home. That is as bad of a stretch as anyone's had to deal with, and somehow they're 2-2 through it. It's kind of impressive, even though they're only 2-2. It's one of the more impressive 2-2 runs. Lions coming off New Orleans, Chicago, Denver, and Minnesota. They went 3-1. How many of those teams are good? You mentioned the clinching scenario with already locking up the NFC North. And to me, the Lions are perfect. Like the blue, that's not Honolulu blue. That's Viagra blue, because this team can't stay up. They consistently have these letdown spots. And I don't know what it is, but they need to take something to stay up. Because when you look, they've only played 4 teams above 500. 3 were on the road. That's why I think the first half might be the play on Dallas. Even though you have to lay more than a field goal, I think there's a chance the Lions come out a little sluggish, and the Cowboys are locked in, as you mentioned. They're awesome at home. At the half, plus 71 at home versus minus 6 on the road at the break.
The other one that has been a wagon for me this year with the Cowboys has been at home is their team total over. This team hasn't scored. This team's like averaging, I think, 32 points at home, but they haven't scored below. They've scored above 30 points in every single home game. They're just absolutely just crushing it. So, and Detroit, the way I feel about Detroit is, look, when they almost lost to Seattle, and we don't know if Seattle's good or not, and they got when push came to shove, they got their butts kicked by Baltimore, which appears to be the only real good team that they had to face. And so yeah, I think that like it's a really interesting spot. I took Dallas first quarter because I found a quarter spread of -1 and it was -2.
I have no issue with that. I have no.
Yeah.
When a team is so dominant at home, you trust their offense. Also, like Jared Goff is like people trying to talk to me about Jared Goff being a good quarterback is one of the funniest things out there. If you're telling me that Jared Goff's a good quarterback, you're telling me you don't watch the games, you read the box scores. Because with the way offenses are run right now, everything can be so deceptive because there's a misnomer in football right now with people where they think high completion percentages mean that you're a good, accurate quarterback. He has an accurate arm, but he doesn't make quick reads or quick decisions. Like Jared Goff is the definition of mediocre. I don't trust him on the road.
Yeah, he also had such a statistical anomaly last year of like what he was doing when it came to no turnovers, that like all that regression was like coming back. I mean, he like that's just what happens with him.
Yeah.
And he is a very different quarterback when he is not playing in a protected element. So yeah, I looked at that. Is there another we'll do like one last, is there another last side that you've been looking at and we can kind of take a look and then
let me just run 2 first halves by you.
Yeah, give it to me.
Colts first half -2.5. I love backing a team off a loss in Indy. They lost to Atlanta. It's a horrible loss for them. And I love fading a team off a big win to get off to a slow start in the next one. I think Indy, because they're frustrated from the Atlanta loss, they come out locked in with an offensive-minded head coach. The game plan is super sharp and disciplined out of the gates, and they end up scoring. Defense will limit the Raiders because Aiden O'Connell didn't throw a pass outside the first quarter at Arrowhead last week. So
plus, did they have an offensive touchdown? Did they even have an offensive touchdown? The Raiders?
I don't remember.
I don't think they did.
Yeah, that feels right. And then you look at the Colts, their last 3 home games. They have had the lead at the half. Week 15, only up 1 at Pitts. They wouldn't have covered 2.5 there, but they led Tampa Bay by 7 in Week 12. They led New England by 4. I like them here. I think that is a good first half plan. I have one more for you if you want it.
Yeah, give it to me.
Seahawks first half -2.5.
Oh, the return of Will. The return of Will. That's they're playing in Houston. Let me see who's Seattle playing this week. Steelers.
So you got to factor in tough place to play. We also now have a full game of Mason Rudolph film in the current offense. So Seattle knows what they want to do with him. I mean, you kind of know what Mason Rudolph is at this point. But you got to remember the Steelers, for most of this year, have been a second half team. A lot of late fourth quarter comebacks and heroics from Pickett to Pickens. Their last halftime road lead for Pittsburgh was Week 3 at Las Vegas. Week 15.
I'm looking at this now, and I'm seeing all Pittsburgh's last 10 that they have. They have covered. Yeah, with last week, like they did fine at the end, but just overall, yeah, they've been terrible. Well, you know why? This is also part of that offensive coordinator thing. That team has never looked prepared out of the gate.
No, and they don't have a quarterback that they can take risks with, so everyone knows how to play them. You can play them very safely. I think Seattle will force Rudolph to make mistakes. They'll limit the run game. Again, the factor of the home field advantage with the first half bet under a field goal, that is always key for me. So I'm a little hesitant to go Cowboys because I don't want to lay 3.5 in the first half in a game where I can get 4.5, out here. So those are 2 first halves though that did jump out to me because I think there are opportunities there.
The last one that I noticed also on the Cowboys is that they were still offering a pretty good number on halftime full time, because if the angle to everybody is a letdown bounce back spot, it's 120, I believe, for halftime full time on them, which is surprisingly low. It's probably gotten bet up a little bit from there, but yeah, that's another way to play it. This is, first of all, the longest supersized episode I've done, so thank you for being part of it. We gave everybody a lot of good information, a lot of good plays, a lot of good stuff. Dustin, let folks know where they can find you.
All right, on Twitter at Dustin Swedelson. The last name's Swedelson. And then you can catch me weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, sharp money on VSIN, the sports betting network. If you have YouTube TV, we're part of the sports package.
Awesome. We love our friends over at VSIN. Dustin, thank you for coming by. For everyone else who tuned in, thank you so much. Good luck with your bets this week, and I'll see you in probably another video this weekend.